Welcome back for another episode of Civility Wins, the Family Law Edition. I am your host, Kristen Goss, founder and owner of KWG Family Legal and Mediation Services. We are your knowledgeable, warm, and gracious attorneys. And remember, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I have with me today two esteemed guests. We have Don Mole on my right and Kunal on my left. And I am going to briefly read a little intro of them, but I want to ask them both personally their journey and how they ended up getting into today. We're going to have a lot of good discussion for you. So starting with Don, he is a private mortgage banker who has earned the Certified Divorce Lending Professional designation, which is very rare. He focuses his practice on helping divorcing homeowners make informed decisions regarding their home equity solutions, and he assists the professional divorce team by identifying potential conflicts between the marital settlement agreement, the mortgage, and the real property. So thank you for joining me, Don.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you. And Kunal, we have Kunal A. Merchandane.
It's a mouthful.
He is the president and senior attorney at Klein Law Group in Boca Raton, Florida. He has a practice spanning with real estate, bankruptcy, civil litigation, and family law. Kunal is known for his strategic advocacy and deep courtroom experience, having led trials and appellate matters across Florida, including precedent-setting cases like Murray versus HSBC Bank. So thank you so much for joining me, Kunal.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here today.
Yes, and it's going to be a great discussion because I have, again, Don, who is a certified divorce lending professional, and we'll get into a lot of that and what that means. And just so that you know, for the audience, I created this podcast because we were talking about collaborative. A lot of people don't know about collaborative, and it was to spread the word. What is collaborative? And in a nutshell, it's me as a family law attorney or Kunal as a family law attorney. We work in a collaborative space with other professionals. And in this particular instance, we're going to talk a lot about what Don does and how he really helps us attorneys stay in our lane and really make sure that we're advocating on the legal aspects. But there are a lot of things that need to be considered that aren't in litigated settings, especially, that he is very valuable in versus litigation and collaborative. So we'll get a little bit into that today. So starting with you, Don, if you can share with the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So in terms of my professional journey, I've been in the financial services industry for 25 years now. And the last 5, I've actually, I was on the lending side. I was kind of came across someone who mentioned about divorce lending, and I said, perked up. I said, "What do you mean by that?" Having been a divorce survivor myself, and when I went through the process and had a lot of resources, having worked at 2 of the largest banks here in Florida, a lot of the aspects that were there were not brought to my attention by the traditional mortgage originator. So when I learned about this Divorce Lending Association, the opportunity to earn what you so eloquently put about the Certified Divorce Lending Professional designation, I said, boy, if that's not the universe tapping me on the shoulder saying this is the route you got to go. So 5 years ago, my practice is focused exclusively to helping divorcing homeowners and their professional divorce team, just going on the most positive trajectory as possible. So that's how I got here.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. And Kunal, what about you? What is your personal journey?
So I've been practicing for 15 years, and originally I was much more focused into asset protection. When I started off my career, I worked several corporate law firms, and I was approached by the firm that I eventually took over, and they said, well, we've got this family law component, we've got this asset protection component, and there's real synergy between the two. And I said, okay, well, the pay was okay, the pay was good, and I started that, and I realized how much they go hand in hand, and how we as a firm are uniquely situated compared to other firms to provide both a family law perspective, but then also the asset protection perspective, because that I think that gets lost to a lot of people. And so been doing that for 11 years now, so it was relatively early in my career, and it's been interesting, it's been fun, it's been rewarding, it's been frustrating, but it's been great.
Thank you for sharing.
We never have frustration.
Yeah. Never. That's really interesting because another reason why I wanted this podcast was for the asset protection piece, because as you can, I'm sure, have come across in your experience, people are not as proactive a lot of times when it comes to protecting their assets until it's too late. And we're talking about guardianship, we're talking about probate. And in order to avoid that, it's really, really key to make sure that you have your assets protected, not your assets, your assets, your valuables protected to avoid guardianship. Me personally went through guardianship and 2 years of probate litigation when my dad passed away in 2014. And it is not, it's not easy, grieving someone and then on top of that, having to go through the court system. So what you do with the asset protection piece is key and important. And I think also in family law, something that, like you said, is missing. And so it sounds like you have like a very holistic approach in how you're helping families.
Yeah. So when you talk about asset protection, I think it's more than just the dollars and cents. Asset protection, at least for me, means obviously your dollars and cents, your property, but also your family and your peace of mind. That's a very important part of your assets. So when we're approaching a case, we're looking at it obviously financially. We're looking at it in terms of your family, making sure that your family as a unit is protected, and then also your peace of mind. So we're jump ahead a little bit, but that's been one of the campaigns, one of the goals that we've had growing was the estate planning, probate aspect of things to prevent you from not only losing somebody you love, going through that emotionally, but also the legal implications of that, and trying to make that as smooth of a process as it possibly can be. Obviously, it's not going to be smooth. It's not going to be fun, but that's the goal, is to make everything as good as we can make it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Protect your assets.
Yes, for sure. So Don, I want to switch back over to you. You and I met through the collaborative community, and you're very, very valuable. He's like the go-to guy. He's like that mortgage guy, right? That's your tagline. Divorce mortgage guy.
Right.
If you can share with the audience how you work with professionals like myself in the collaborative community in your particular industry.
Sure. Well, I think first it really helps to understand the context of what I'm about to say, and that is that you can't think traditionally when you think mortgage in a divorce setting. And the reason is the traditional mortgage originator, and I'm talking about someone you can walk into any bank, talk to a mortgage originator or an independent mortgage broker or a banker or a broker. Today is what, Friday. So I'm telling you what every mortgage originator, traditional mortgage originator, is doing today. And that is that they are working with realtors in the local community to say, hey, listen, if you're going to be showing homes to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, send them to me first so that we can do a pre-qualification. And I'm going to generate that pre-qualification letter for you so that if you identify a property this weekend and you submit an offer, that seller will understand that your buyer is a legitimate and vetted buyer. Well, the clients that come to me that are now in the divorce setting, they're nowhere near traditional mortgage origination mode. They're in divorce mortgage planning mode. Completely different, because when this weekend that couple is looking for a home, they're combining assets, they're combining the incomes so that they can qualify for the home. Now it's the opposite. Everything's unraveling. And typically that mindset is, can we keep the home? Should I keep the home? Typically I hear, well, I want the stability for the children, the neighborhood, the schools, the friends, etc. Okay, that's great. But before you even go and fill out a mortgage application, you have more problems in front of you. There's a minefield in front of you that you're about to walk across before we even get to talking about the mortgage. So that's where we identify things such as the home itself. And when I talk about the home itself, there's valuation issues. Because typically you're going to have, maybe in your family law cases, you're going to have, get an appraisal done.
Yeah.
Or a comparative market analysis from a local realtor. That's great. However, unfortunately, there are gaps associated with both of those valuation methods that will not be reflected on the marital balance sheet. So when equitable distribution comes into play, many times it's not equitable for the retaining spouse. So we want to identify that. Then we've got other issues with ownership. You two are looking at it like, okay, well, it's tenancy by the entirety. That's your perspective. My perspective is, well, if one spouse wants to retain the home and the other spouse has an equity buyout demand, well, we want to structure that potential refinance, if we have to do a refinance, in the most efficient loan program possible. And that's why I'm looking at that ownership from that perspective. And then, believe it or not, the insurance. There was a case, unfortunately people aren't aware of, but it was in the 80s. It was here in Florida. It was up in the Panhandles in Escambia County, Pensacola. And what happened was, it was Morgan v. Morgan. And what happened was, the spouse, Mr. Morgan, was awarded the marital home. Mrs. Morgan vacated the marital home. And the final judgment came down in August of 82. Only 90 days later, in November, there was a fire that destroyed the property. Mr. Morgan filed a claim, and the claim was denied. Actually went to the appellate court. And the appellate court held, it was 1988, Morgan v. American Security Insurance Company. They held for the carrier. Now, I don't know national statistics, but I started tracking this for my cases back in 2023. I was involved in 178 divorce cases in 23, 219 in 2024. This year, I'm just north of 130. 1 in 10 of the clients that I represent actually would have been exposed and had no coverage had this not been addressed. I haven't even got to the mortgage yet. I'm just talking about the marital home.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, and then there's other issues. But one commonly overlooked aspect is actually, hey, your tax filing status is going to change in the eyes of the IRS. From married to either single or household. A single or head of household. Okay, what kind of implications is that going to have on you? And how can we actually structure, if you have to do a refinance, so that you can actually maybe take advantage of the tax benefits and the tax savings that the IRS would allow you to do so. But then, how many times have you heard, let me ask you this, in the last 2 years, how many clients have said, my God, we've got a 3% mortgage. We refinanced during the pandemic when it was in the 2s and the 3s from 2020 to 2022. Now fast forward, they're getting divorced and they say, I can't afford to go to a 7% mortgage.
Oh, absolutely. That happens incredibly frequently. I mean, as the rates are higher now, and so there's a lot of, call it, delayed refinancing. And I really dislike that because it doesn't provide a separation. Ideally, barring kids being involved, you get your divorce decree and you never have to see that person again. You're never involved in that person's life again.
Right.
But keeping people tied with kids or with a mortgage is it's problematic.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's problematic.
They want to be completely disentangled, and I get it. So what we look at is, hey, if you do have that 3% mortgage, let's see if there's a way to keep it. And there's something called loan assumption. And there's actually 2 types of loan assumptions. We want to explore both of those types of loan assumptions first before you go down the rabbit hole of talking to a loan originator and doing a refinance with an equity buyout. So that is what's really big, especially now. I get involved in a lot of mediations. And there's language that's required. But by doing so, it sets up both spouses for future mortgage financing success when and if they need to utilize it. Yeah. So, and then let me ask you this. Support income, for example. We utilize, any mortgage originator is going to utilize support income. And there's very clear guidelines that have to be followed, whether it's alimony, child support. However, after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, there's no longer a tax incentive for the payor of alimony. So you probably see it where, okay, if he or she, the payor, has the assets, and speaking of wanting to be disentangled, take your lump sum, and we're each going our way. Okay, so if you're representing the client that's actually the recipient of that lump sum, Okay, great. He or she has a nice, healthy bank account, but doesn't have necessarily income. And income's kind of important when it comes time to qualifying for a mortgage.
Right, right.
How do we create qualifying income? And that's where someone like me that has been through the training and has the practical experience saying, okay, listen, there are strategies that we can create qualifying income, especially if we're working with the impecunious spouse and they've been the primary caregiver for the children. Now, okay, utilizing the support income or re-entering the workforce. How do we create qualifying income? How do we settle this case so that both parties can go about in the most positive trajectory as possible?
I think that's really important, that qualified income. I think what a lot of folks don't appreciate is that their expenses are going to be going up, but not their income when you're all is said and done.
Yeah.
Well, I hear the word, I want the stability for the children. I'm like, okay, let's just stop for a minute and talk about what do we mean by stability? And I get it, you want to stay in the same house and the stability, but if throughout the course of the conversation, I've heard about the children are involved in activities. We all know activities aren't cheap. And you're going from 2 household income to 1, or maybe now you're going out and re-entering the workforce. Okay, stability, how do you define stability? Meaning the roof over their head, or the style and the life that they've been accustomed to now? Or are they going to have to stop playing that particular sport or a particular activity? So let's take a look at it to make sure that, okay, what do you mean? Is it ultimately going to satisfy your goals? Because, a mediation or collaboration, some parties will come and say, well, I want to keep it.
Yeah. There's definitely a distinction between we call it physical assets. You can divide a bank account. You can see there's $100 in the bank account, and you can say that $100 is worth $100. When you start fighting over kids, there's no monetary amount. There's no set number, and you see that come across for most parents. Unfortunately, there are other parents out there that will look at it as a monetary amount, and so when you talk about stability, I think you're hitting right on the point. It's like, what does stability mean, and how do you value it?
And in the collaborative setting, it's very important because you are able to come up with more creative ways to be able to cater to the particular family, opposed to, hey, if you don't agree and you can't resolve it on your own, go to court, but it's left up to a stranger, the judge, to make a decision, and they don't know the ins and outs of your day-to-day. So I did have a question for you, Kunal, because I know you do you do real estate, bankruptcy. I know all of that kind of flows hand in hand as well.
Yeah.
So my question to you would be, what has been like the worst case scenario when someone tries to either do it on their own, because I know that's a big thing as well, without proper guidance from someone like yourself, or that case. I know we all have had that one case that we're like, hey, this is something that I want to make sure that those, other people out there in the public will know about it, and it would prevent further things from occurring.
So one case that sticks out was actually a bankruptcy case that I handled a few years back, probably 5 to 10 years ago, and it stuck out of all the cases that I've had, because the person didn't do it by themselves. They went to an attorney, and they hired an attorney to help them with this case, but the attorney didn't know what he was doing. He was dabbling into an area of law that he didn't really understand, and his client, was going to pay the consequences for that. And so I recommend this to everybody who's searching for an attorney is make sure that the attorney does what you need them to do, and regularly does it. That isn't dabbling into family law, is not dabbling into bankruptcy law, is not dabbling into divorces or personal injury, anything like that, because this attorney had filed a case for this client, and what the attorney didn't realize is there were certain exemptions and certain rules that would apply because the client had not lived in the state of Florida for more than 2 years. And what that meant was that the client was looking at losing out on their primary residence because it didn't qualify for the the homestead exemption yet. And what ended up happening is that the attorney and the client came to me and said, fix this. And I was able to fix it, but the attorney actually had to pull money from his retirement account to be able to pay to make the issue go away. And we negotiated a deal. It was a good deal, but there was still money that had to be paid out from this attorney's retirement account so that he could cover the client. And he was doing the right thing. You know, he was taking responsibility for it. But that's what happened. And so, again, if you are out there looking for an attorney, you're looking for a professional, make sure that they do what you need them to do, and they do it on a regular basis, that they're not dabbling into things.
That's true.
So that one just sticks out. It's always stuck out in my head. You know, there's plenty more nasty things being said between separating couples, but I don't know if this is a PG program. Is this
Right.
rated R? Maybe
But they don't need an experiment. AI, that's what we're talking about. AI,
Yes.
right? AI can do all that.
AI could do it. Yeah, why waste your time, right?
Right.
Oh, I can absolutely see when I get pleadings from the other side or correspondence from the other side, and I say, that is AI.
Ooh.
And it's, AI is a great tool. And I'll be honest, I use AI. It gets me my rough draft. And then I'm stepping in and I'm taking over and I'm completing things. But you can tell when somebody just puts it into AI and then sends it out the door.
I got an email today from someone this morning, and they didn't check it, and it said enter. They had brackets. Enter subject information here. Enter name here.
Oh, gosh.
Come on.
Gosh, technology. I have a question for you too, kind of similar to him. And you mentioned mediation earlier. I know that you testify as an expert in litigated cases as well. What has been your experience in what you do and the value you provide in litigation versus collaborative? If that's something you can share with the audience.
Kind of similar to you, and I've got a few that come to mind right now, but they all have one thing in common, and that is that they talked to a traditional mortgage originator prior. Okay, and nothing against traditional mortgage originators.
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by them. However, the services needed is beyond the purview of your traditional mortgage originator in divorce cases. So the one thing in common I can think of 3 cases off the top of my mind is that lack of involving someone like me during the case resulted in it was either conflicting language in the settlement agreement, because what as a legal option oftentimes is not a mortgage option. So that's why on the collaborative side, it's very engaging in subject matter experts to come in and help facilitate the case. But in these 3 cases that come to mind, it was either lack of language or conflicting language in the marital settlement agreement that prevented all 3 clients post-final judgment from effectuating all 3 cases of equity buyout refinances. And had there been language inserted in the settlement agreement prior, it would have settled. Now, it's not the end of the world if there was an amendment with all 3 cases, but 2 of the 3 ex-spouses are saying, take the amendment and stick it where the sun doesn't shine. Okay? So, and that's at that point, there's nothing anyone can do. And it's sad, because when you have someone that is emotionally attached to the home, children are emotionally attached to the home, now we got to sell it. When I'm looking at it saying, it doesn't have to be that way. It didn't have to be that way, but unfortunately that's where we are. So yeah, that's why, going back to that theme of you can't think traditionally when it's, because everyone has someone that they know in the mortgage industry.
Yeah.
You can talk, I get it. But it's kind of like, the Florida Bar annual conferences right now. So I was talking to some forensics. Forensic accounting wasn't even a thing until the 80s. Divorce has been around since the beginning of time. So now here we have forensic accounting that evolved because they recognize that traditional CPAs don't have the skill set necessary for divorce cases. Well, we're very similar with the mortgage industry right now. Shame on the mortgage industry. I was trained like everyone else how to help the couple when they bought the marital home, but nothing. In fact, I was given in January, this Florida Supreme Court actually accredited us to give you need CLE. Judges need continuing judicial ed. So I actually gave the first continuing judicial ed lecture up at the 9th and 18th Circuit, which is Central Florida. And I even said, for giggles, I pulled out the mortgage origination study book. It's like 416 pages.
Yeah, I think giggles when I think about that book.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if you're suffering from insomnia, I've got some for you to read at night. But up front of those 416 pages, and I think it was 16 chapters. You know how many chapters were dedicated to divorce mortgage planning?
None.
0. You know how many times if I go to the glossary of terms appendix, how many times I can find the term divorce mortgage planning? 0. And that's just a reflection on the mortgage industry. So I think where we are is where the forensic industry was back in the 80s. That hopefully that there will be some more awareness. And that's my biggest thing. I go around the state, give a lot of CLE lectures, CME, CJE lectures, creating awareness. Look, it's actually a thing. And if you want to help elevate the level of service that we provide our clients and set them up for success, you need to get a different perspective on things. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Definitely see the difference as a divorce attorney working with you versus.
And here's the other thing, because and again, nothing against the traditional mortgage origination model, but it is a commission-based model. Okay, so it's a volume model. So you take 10 applications. If you close 5 of those loans, you're making a nice living. However, by definition, you cannot be a financial neutral if your compensation is based on the outcome of a divorce proceeding. You can't. Okay? So something that's I did last year was I formed this is going to sound so self-aggrandizing, but the Divorce Mortgage Guy, LLC. And by doing so, it's now a flat fee-based model. So it's a true fiduciary relationship, saying, hey, listen, here's your potential issues that you're going to have. Here's the roadblocks. Here's how you can overcome them. And by the way, here's your different options. You can take that to any lender that you want. Have them do it. My work is done, and that's because I'm looking out for your best interest and how you can get set up for success. That's it. So
what you do is for sure very valuable. Same with you, Kunal. So I have a question for both of you. It's kind of like to wrap this up. Do you have any upcoming projects that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I do. So you mentioned this a little bit earlier. One of the things that we're expanding on is our estate planning. From the outset, the firm was focused on family, and it also had this financial component. That's where I came in originally. And that was a very unique proposition, and it gave us a lot of differentiation, a lot of benefit to our clients because we had the knowledge base in both sectors that overlap a lot. I mean, there are constantly financial problems before, during, and after a divorce. And so to provide an even better service to our clients, we're looking at expanding into more estate planning because once you get divorced, everything's got to be updated.
Yeah.
You don't want your ex-spouse deciding whether they're going to pull the plug or not because I can guess where that one's going to go. You don't want your assets going to your ex-spouse and your kids. They can't really own anything until they're of age. And then when they become of age, you don't necessarily want an 18-year-old with access to a whole bunch of money. I mean, I think I was a pretty responsible kid. I think I turned out okay, but I would not give myself a bunch of money at 18.
Right.
So that's been a big focus, and we've got a great attorney, Amelia Wartshaw, who's at the firm. She's phenomenal. She's smart, very knowledgeable, and she's been really focusing in on that to help our clients. And that's been the goal.
Awesome. Very good goal, for sure. Thank you for sharing. And what about you, Don? I know you mentioned you're all over.
Right.
Like, who doesn't know Don, right?
Well,
you mentioned the CJEs. You're teaching the judges now.
Right.
The attorneys. What else you got going on?
No, it's in terms of project, it's been the same project from day one, and that is to create awareness that, hey, guess what? This is a thing. And it's almost like when I go across the state, and this was, it started years ago, it was, and I say the word quadro. Who comes to mind when I say
Matt
quadro?
Lundy.
Matt Lundy, right? So I contacted Matt and said, hey, my goal, I don't want this to sound weird, but you're my hero. And my goal is to be the Matt Lundy of divorce mortgage planning. So he provided me a little guidance on what he did. So yeah, it's just, this is a thing. And whether it's me or the handful of others loan officers that have actually gone through the curriculum and earned the designation, do yourself a favor and just look one of us up.
Like
together.
AI, right?
You
like
got it.
Getting ahead of the game. Like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're going to be way. I'm a little bit scared because I don't like technology, but that's just me. So yeah, I would absolutely agree. They're like only a small percentage. Like
Says the host of a podcast.
Right?
I know, right? Hypocritical of me, man.
Thanks for bringing that up.
But,
Yeah, in terms of, there's, I don't want to make this a Don commercial because there's a handful of others, but there's not many.
not many, no. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Before we leave, I do want both of you to share with the audience where they can find out more information about you if they just have further questions or want to reach out. So I'll start with you, Don.
It's a pretty difficult website to remember. It's thedivorcemortgageguy.com.
You might want to spell it.
Yeah, I had to learn that mortgage has a T in it. So thedivorcemortgageguy.com. Or Google me, Don Moll, MOLL. So that's how you can find me.
Awesome. And how about you, Kunal?
So you can reach us, phone number 561-353-2800. Our website is Klein Attorneys, and that's with an S.com.
Awesome. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
And I feel like I'm ignoring the guests. Sorry. I'm not used to talking to a lens.
You have watched another episode of Civility Wins, the Family Law Edition. We have Don Moll, had Kunal, a great conversation. Please, again, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. I am your host, Kristen Goss, founder and owner of KWG Family Legal and Mediation Services. We are your knowledgeable, warm, and gracious attorneys. We help families divorce with civility. And until next time, take care.